Hi, my name is Dr. Emil. So I wanted to explain just the basic layout of how we look at health, okay? When we look at things from a holistic perspective, you need to take different pieces of the puzzle into account. So one analogy I like to use is what we call the stool analogy, okay? So I'm going to draw it on the whiteboard for you. So when we think about a stool, right? You got the stool, and you have three legs to the stool. So what happens if one of the legs go out? Then the whole stool goes down, right? So all three are important. So the first leg we're going to talk about, and this is just going to be brief, we're not going to dive so deep right here, but is DNA. Now, many people, they'll think that if something is in their family history, that they're doomed. Like it's in their genetics and there's nothing they can do. And you know what? It's really, really important to pay attention to your family history. So me knowing that my one grandfather had passed away from a massive heart attack, I know that heart disease is in my family. So I want to be proactive when it comes to heart disease and do the things that I know I need to do as far as exercise and nutrition and keeping the function of my body at the highest level. I want to be proactive about that, okay? But I do want to point out to you that there's something called epigenetics, which means above the gene. What does that mean? Certain triggers are what turn genes on and enable them to express themselves versus turning them off, okay? And this is really, really important. So epigenetics is more of the new science, and that's based on how you eat, move, and think. It's based on your lifestyle, okay? So remember this, okay? Stress is ultimately what causes problems, but there's two main things that can cause you to have health challenges. It's toxicity and deficiency, or both. So toxicity and or deficiency is what creates problems in our body. When we're looking at your health picture, we want to step back and we want to think about how we look at health from the perspective, from a holistic perspective, okay? And then we want to dive deep and figure out, we want to pop the hood open and figure out what's causing your underlying health issues. We want to get to the root cause, and that's what makes us so different. So if we look at these three legs right here, I think you'll start to piece some things together when it comes to your health. So the second part of the stool, we're going to talk about stress, like I mentioned. So there are three types of stress. So people say, oh, I'm so stressed out. There's actually three types of stress, okay? There's the physical, chemical, and emotional. So if you think back to your history, I think back just for me as an example, physical stress, okay? I know that growing up, we used to fight like animals. We played tackle football with no pads, right? Think about that. I played a lot of sports. I broke my leg really bad between 9th and 10th grade. And so, you know, you got to start to piece your physical stress history together. I've been in some car accidents, plus I have a physical job. I work out, you know, so if you think about it, gravity's pushing down on all of us, right? So you may be sitting at a desk and that can be your physical stress. There's something now called text neck. Have you heard of that? That's from us just sitting like this. It puts pressure on the brainstem right here. All right, and that's something that's so key. And many times we do not realize how bad gravity is causing us to have physical stress. Maybe you're lifting a kid or a child. Maybe you have a baby on one side, right? Think about that. Maybe your occupation has you physically working from one side of your body only. Think about that. We have a lot of people that they work physical jobs, but you know, if you're sitting at a desk, I'll tell you, that's the worst physical stress. They're saying now, the research says that sitting is the new smoking. It's like sugar to your teeth. It's horrible. We are not designed to sit. So I want you to think of your past history of physical stress and maybe some things now that you do on a day-to-day basis that can create physical stress in your body and especially on your spine. That's something where it can build up and you don't feel it, but I'll tell you this, x-rays do not lie. So when we see someone with spinal degeneration or damage, we know it's been there for a while. Okay, so that's the first one I'm talking about. The second one we're going to hit on is chemical stress. This is a sneaky one. And you know what? This is something that accumulates over time and you do not necessarily know that you're being affected by chemical stress. So what we do is actually we have ways to objectively test and check if your cells are inflamed. That's something that's really key. And I'll tell you, there's a few chemicals I want to mention. There's actually 4 main chemicals I want to mention. And I want you to think about your history. The first one's mercury. All right, so think about where in your life that mercury could have come from? Well, I was born in 1974 and I was fully vaccinated, so I had mercury in the vaccinations. Now, when I was born in 1974, the amount of vaccinations was this much. Now it's this much. I'm not saying get vaccinated, do not get vaccinated, but what I'm saying is let's just be aware of where these chemical stressors can come from. I also have fillings, which I'm actually looking to get removed the right way. You have to be careful when you remove fillings, but 50% of the fillings are mercury. That's another place where mercury can actually sneak up on you, right? Because as we get older, we actually grind our teeth and it will release a little bit of the mercury over time. The next one I want to talk about is lead. That's in the pipes. If you're in a house, if you grew up in a house that was built before 1978, or if you're in a house now that was built before 1978, there's mercury in the house. I know that they took it out of paint and they took it out of the gas, but that wasn't until the 80s. So lead can actually still be affecting us. Plus, these toxins can be passed for 4 generations. So if your great-great-grandmother had mercury or lead, they could pass them, and especially lead, it's stored in bone. So your body is so intelligent that what it does with the lead is it stores it in the bone to take it out of your bloodstream. But I want you to think about, especially if you're a woman, the 2 main times when bone breaks down in a woman's life and can be passed on is one time when they're pregnant. So if bone's broken down during pregnancy, which that's just a normal part of pregnancy, that lead can actually get passed into the baby, into the fetus, okay? The second time in a woman's life when bones in their body can be broken down is during menopause, okay? Even if you're a man and you have osteopenia or osteoporosis and your bone is breaking down, lead levels can actually rise, and that can cause you to have tons of issues like brain fog and fatigue. Same thing with mercury. Mercury can cause you to have brain fog. It can cause you to have fatigue, a lack of clarity, like you just don't have that focus. You're not on your A game, right? It can also affect your energy levels. They can inflame your cells, affect your hormones, like your thyroid hormone, your insulin, and I'll go into that more in detail in another video, but I want to give you an overview right now. Another one is aluminum, which is actually, you know what? Mercury is still in the flu vaccines, but now aluminum is in all the other vaccinations, so that's another one that can affect you. And then a fourth one I want to touch on is called glyphosate. That's one you probably haven't heard of. If you have, you know that that's the main constituent in Roundup, which they spray all the food with. So if you're eating something that's not organic, you're taking in glyphosate, and what glyphosate can do is actually make your cells more vulnerable to the other toxins, and especially your brain, because these metals can actually embed in your brain, and they can be affecting us. But here's the thing, they slowly start to accumulate, and we like to use the analogy of a bucket. So if you think about a bucket can handle a certain amount, right, of say liquid, I want you to think of your body and your body's ability to handle stress like a bucket. So we have physical, chemical, and we're going to talk about the last one, but these stressors are slowly filling up in your bucket, and when it gets to the point where it starts to overfill, that's where symptoms happen, and that's where you have the fatigue. That's where you have the bouts of low-grade depression where you're emotional ups and downs. That's where you lose clarity and focus and you start to forget things. You just don't have that go and that zip, and you're not peak performing. Okay, so we need to identify if any of this stuff is affecting you. And I can tell you this, if this is the first time you're starting to think about things like this, you're definitely being affected. Okay, I can tell you this, I'm aware of the chemical stressors in my body that I've accumulated over time, because I know that 20 years ago I took Accutane, which was a vicious drug. I was 22 years old at the time. I took Accutane for acne. I took it for 3 months. That's a vicious drug, and if you know anything about Accutane, it can cause homicidal and suicidal thoughts. It can cause depression. It affected my liver. It actually made my liver toxic, and it actually created liver issues in my body, and my enzymes were high. So I had Accutane that I took. I also took an antibiotic about 15 years ago. I thought I had gotten bit. I think it was by a spider. My elbow blew up, and I took an antibiotic. But knock on wood, those were the last 2 times that I took medication, all right, prescription medication, or even over the counter. I just haven't taken it in years, thank goodness, because I've been working on building my health. But I know that those things, they lead to accumulating in my body. and I know that's what happened with me. I want you to start to think about your history. Were there times where you think that you might have had chemical stress? Have you ever taken any antibiotics? Are you on medication now? Are you eating food that's not organic? Think about that, right? Besides the fact that the food and the air and the water, the lead's also in the piping. That's just another place where you could actually have lead, is in the pipes. So you need to drink filtered water. The third type of stress we're going to talk about is emotional stress. And that's another tricky one, because that is one that really affects us because it never shuts off. So if you're dealing with any emotional stress, have you ever gotten stressed out emotionally and then it led to a physical problem? See, here's the trick about all of these. Whether you have physical, chemical, or emotional stress, it still sparks the stress response in the same manner. It still causes the same thing physiologically in your body. And I'm going to talk about that more on a detailed video about this, about the stress response and what happens. But I want to plant the seed and let you know that whether it's physical, chemical, or emotional stress, it affects you the same way. Believe it or not, it still creates this stress response that affects your entire body and the entire global health and wellness of your body and the physiology going on. The last stool leg right here that we're going to talk about is actually the gut and the gut biome, okay? Your gut biome, remember this, I want you to realize this. 80% of your immune system's in your gut biome, and what's called your gut-associated lymph tissue. So the bacteria in your gut, what's going on in your gut? They call this the second brain, and I will tell you this, that you need to have a healthy gut. If you have a leaky gut, if you have inflammatory bowel disorders, if you have anything like Crohn's, if you have reflux, if you're having digestive issues, then you know that you're having gut issues. But I'll tell you this, that it can be sneaky. And you might think, no, I don't have any gut issues. I don't have bloating. I go to, I'm regular, right? Things are working properly. It can be an autoimmune condition that you don't even realize is happening. It can be sneaky. And you need to make sure you're getting the good bacteria in there and that it's occupying the space to block the yeast and the fungi and the gram-negative, the bad bacteria, from developing, because that can really affect your digestion, the formation of your vitamins, and also your immune system. All right, so those are the three parts of the stool, just to give you an overview about how we look at health and wellness. Okay, so I want you to focus on each one. All right, I want you to look at each one, and what we can do is, if you have any questions, we can definitely go over this in a consultation, but I will make some more detailed videos. If you want more information about these different pieces, we'll make it available. All right, have a great day, and I look forward to talking to you on the next video.